Healthcare is a complex issue, but only because it's made to be that way. Any issue that can be simplified doesn't need big governments and corporations to manage for us. The key to good health is something we all want, like a roof over our head, a kitchen, bathroom, nice bed to sleep in, clothes, TV, all the basics. Wanting good health is a given for all of us, even those who smoke, drink, overeat, don't exercise, or have many of the other bad habits that we know aren't good for us. Keeping in good health isn't as easy for some of us as others, but I think it's safe to say that we all want good physical and mental health, and we all want to be strong and good looking even if we don't try hard to get it. What we can't have in the way of perfect health, we want the best we can get. This simple reality seems to elude our leaders and those who run the healthcare system. What we want is not necessarily good care, but good health. If we could have perfect health without health care, we wouldn't be trying to provide health care to everyone at the expense of our futures. I mean, if there was no such thing as accidents on our roads and highways, we wouldn't entertain spending what we do on vehicle insurance. But that's how our health care works. So caring for our health plays a big role in our lives and future. So my plan for health care, however, attacks the issue from a totally different perspective. Rather than trying to find ways to pay for health care, I'm looking at what makes us sick. When I was growing up, when health was debated, carcinogens were key to the overall conversation. Carcinogens are pollutants that cause cancer. As I got older, I heard about how they can also cause other illnesses as well. Cigarettes were at the center of the original debates. That discussion then bled over into talking about pollutants that cause the same kind of problems that cigarette smoke does. Then it came back to cigarettes and secondhand smoke. When I was young, everyone smoked, and it was done everywhere. I started smoking with most of my friends at the age of 12 and 13. By the age of 14, it was allowed in front of many parents. In high school, we had smoking lounges where we all went in between classes to smoke, even freshmen. Everywhere anyone went, even in grocery stores, the ground was littered with cigarette butts. Grocers even had to hire extra person whose primary responsibility was to go around with a dry mop and clean up cigarette butts. So pretty much everyone was addicted to cigarette smoke, whether they smoked or not. When secondhand smoke was discovered to be bad for health, there were lawsuits against the tobacco industry while many Americans quit smoking. Then those who didn't were forced to smoke outside in most public places. Throughout this social learning process, pollutants that also have carcinogenic properties became the primary focus of most healthcare and environmental debates. I think those discussions would still be going on today if it hadn't been for 401k investment plans where employees set up retirement funds for their employees through investing in the stock market. It seemed the more we learned about carcinogens, the more lawsuits there were against big corporations who weren't careful enough about how they produce or market their products and expose us and the environment to dangerous chemicals. But since we wanted to be able to buy the products they were producing as cheaply as possible while it was their job to give us what we wanted, the solution was to make us sick along the way while we had the option of taking them to court if we got sick. It seemed in the beginning that most of us remained healthy while the lawsuits weren't able to stop big profits from being made. Then once most of us were invested in making money off this process through 401k plan, suing big corporations became antisocial while the word carcinogen has been largely removed from our dialogue. So of course products have gotten more toxic while industries don't mind polluting more if they don't have to worry about the cost of being sued anymore. As would be expected, we now have a very sick society that desperately depends on a very expensive healthcare system to survive. But our healthcare system still doesn't give us what we want, good health. It's got very good at fixing the things pollutants cause, but it hasn't come up with a way that allows us to expose ourselves to pollutants and stay healthy. So good health evades most of us, while those who have it never know when they're going to join the ranks of the critically ill. This is why everyone needs to have a health care plan, or they're at risk of falling through the cracks when they need health care and can't afford it. But still, the key to health care and good health is getting rid of what causes most illnesses, pollutants. This can be done in many ways not possible before because we have the technology, manpower, and financing ability to invest in upgrading our industries so they don't pollute the products we consume or environment anywhere along the production and consumption line while at the same time making them more efficient. However, along with the financial success we in Wall Street have enjoyed, with so many of us invested in it turning corporate profits, there's been little will by bankers to lead in building a non-toxic society, because it would require investing money over a long term before the kinds of profits they're accustomed to being made are seen again. By average Americans being so heavily invested in the future of Wall Street, we're no longer the kind of consumers that used to keep them in check. So they've gotten reckless in the way they manage our money, the level of toxins they allow into the products we consume, and the environment we live in. Since they have enough money to buy off our elected officials, the government has become complicit, and they're abusing us for profits, while the money that could have gone towards bettering our quality of life and health goes into the pockets of elected officials and government bureaucrats. So now the economy is broken, and they have no incentive to fix it, because it seems the worse things get, the better it gets for them. But there's a flaw in their overall game plan. It's a little complicated, but you understanding it will lead to strengthening the economy while changing the course of the healthcare back towards good health rather than big profits for healthcare providers. In the same string of articles in the Washington Times in 1990 that discussed the additive to gasoline and diesel fuel that gives 20% more mileage with 70% less pollution that I discussed in the PIB energy video, there were also stories about further discussions that were had on Capitol Hill about what to do about pollution. This was after the oil companies had turned down the opportunity to use polyisobutylene, PIB, to give us cleaner, more efficient fuels. The biggest pollution problem in those days was smog that hung over our metropolitan cities, like in Beijing, China during the Olympics. These gray-brown hazes were a constant reminder to urban Americans that they breathed polluted air, because it was like a cloud that never went away. Even on sunny days, many cities were dark and cloudy beneath the smoggy haze. So city dwellers complained about it because it made them worry about their health, or worse, made them deathly ill. That's the kind of landscape the debate over forcing the oil companies to use PIB grew out of. So even after PIB was scuttled under the red carpet that rolls up after our nation's Capitol building, concerns about smog continued. That's when a new solution was proposed that the oil companies had no problem with, an additive called MTBE. Since it had PIB in it, which almost everything made from crude oil has some form of the polymer in it, it was able to be sold to Congress as being as good as PIB, as long as lots of free money was passed around town. The truth is, however, that MTBE causes worse pollution problems than the smog it got rid of. It also causes a loss of mileage and pollutes groundwater. What it did do, before it was replaced with ethanol, was cause large emissions of formaldehyde. What everyone liked about it was that formaldehyde dissolved smog. So although it made air quality worse for human health and the environment, since the pollutants Americans were complaining about could no longer be seen, the problem was said to be solved. So all that was needed was for Congress to pass a Clean Air Act that said this additive was good for air quality, and instruct the EPA to require it to be added to all gasoline. That's how politics works in a democracy. If our elected officials tell our government agencies something is a duck even if it doesn't quack, waddle, or have web feet, then it's a duck. Enron accomplished this feat by passing out millions of dollars to elected officials in Washington and state capitals throughout the U.S. while telling them how good MTBE would be for the environment. This kept them from looking past their wallets to find out if it really worked the way it was claimed to work. In 2006, MTBE use was ended because it had polluted most of the nation's groundwater with deadly chemicals. In fact, since many of other countries followed our lead in using it, so has groundwater in just about every place you can imagine been polluted. Since they're still pretending it's good for air quality, ethanol has taken its place. Ethanol produces a similar emission to formaldehyde called acetaldehyde. It also dissolves smog caused by coal burning in diesel engines. Acetaldehyde is what gives us hangovers after drinking too much. It's also a carcinogen. When the changeover from MTBE to ethanol was announced, California took the EPA to court to prove that ethanol worsens air quality. Then the Bush administration stepped in and said they were no longer requiring it to be added to gasoline for air quality, but rather to lessen our dependence on foreign oil. So the program rolled out without being challenged. The problem is that dehydrated ethanol, which is moonshine distilled a few extra times, causes a bigger loss of mileage in most vehicles than it provides, meaning that overall we've become more dependent on foreign oil as a result of using it. And that's without figuring in how much effort goes into growing the corn and refining the ethanol, another process which costs more money to perform than energy given back, even if it gave the kind of mileage the government says it does.